Cake. You like cake. Cake is not a singular experience. It is one composed of layers. Your taste buds sequence these layers, and they play across the strings of your taste buds like a bow to a cello. The succession of these sensations amounts to an experience, a note going to a richer chord. Each layer has its own structural purpose, flavor, consistency. One does not, however, make a cake without thinking of these layers and how they will stand with each other, support each other, in honor of the layers that came before it and with the layers of the future, well in heart and mind. What makes a place? What carries the past through to the present and on to the future? I once visited the Ave Maria Grotto in Coleman, Alabama. A Benedictine monk spent years conforming the landscape there into a creative wonderland, where he converted the former Abbey Quarry into a 4-acre park. Surrounded in this mystifying world of miniatures, reflecting famous places from all around the world. It was, as all placemaking is, a labor of love. I've been there several times now, and I always leave with the feeling that one small act of love can ripple through time and offer the future a place to make their own memories. The idea that this collection of miniature places are reflections of larger places that are scattered across the globe is an echo of each place's intention, all in one, anew place. Its layers and contours are welcoming, and I will return. Without lineage, without history, without perspective, we are unmoored, we are lost. We need heroes with vision to help us understand the past while looking forward to a future that we want to bring closer to us. For the factory at Franklin, in Franklin, Tennessee, Carris Campbell is the history hero. Whatever she's selling, I'm buying. Do you ever have that feeling with someone you meet right away? I trust her. I trust her mind. I trust her intentions without blinking. This is the kind of person you want holding the keys to a better future for all of us. How do we honor the past while looking forward? Well, the answer lies in the spirit of place.
Ooh, spirit of place, the topic of my thesis. I feel like it always comes back to community. I don't know if that's necessarily the right answer, but I feel like the heart of the factory is its care for the community.
The spirit of place is the means through which we give meaning to places. It is what gives a place a vibe. How do you keep a place alive that has no singular event in its history to save it for? The factory at Franklin is not the Alamo. The first human flight was not achieved by the Wright brothers at the factory. While the factory has been saved from destruction, what is next? Who guides that vision, and what is it? The goal is to connect people through layers of history, adaptive reuse, So what is adaptive reuse? We hear this a lot, but what does it really mean?
My favorite way to talk about adaptive reuse is with a cake metaphor. So I kind of went into it early on, and especially in the heritage world, when you approach adaptive reuse, it's different than how you're going to approach preserving a site, like in a specific time. So like the Carter House, you're going to preserve that in that significant historical moment because the moment really gives it life and tells that important story. Whereas you've got the factory, which is its 350,000 square feet, and while significant, doesn't have that like one defining moment. So if you want to preserve it, you're going to have to find a new way to use it. So when we approach it, if we go back to the cake metaphor, you've got different layers through time. So thoughtfully, when you go about it, you're going to pick flavors that complement. As you think about adaptive reuse, you want to pick new uses that are complementary to what's already there. Sure. So like instead of adding like a bubblegum flavor, which would be equivalent to like coming in, ripping everything out and putting brand new, completely modern without a thought for what came behind it, you'll pick like a nice candied orange peel on top because the orange is going to complement the chocolate, and so what we do now should complement the past. And so the priority there is to preserve the physical defining features, like the industrial, like, you know, the brick we have, like the clear story windows that were put into the bar. You're going to preserve those physical features because the physical nature holds the intangible memory. So as long as you can maintain the physical reminder and have an appreciation for the body that came before it, in how you pick that next use and how you pick the next design, the continuity thread is unbroken and you just add a new layer, which is important for us in the heritage world too, because if you freeze a building in time, it can only have a certain connection with people, and sometimes that's valuable. But when you talk about giving a building new life, it's not just economic, but you also want to add new cultural value too. So now we've got new generations coming through, and their cultural value is that, you know, this is the place they come every Sunday to get a donut. This is where they had, you know, their first dance recital, something like that. And now you can have new people who have new investments in a different way. And that's just going to reinforce the protection it has long-term. People who are invested in it will look after it and will keep it alive for a new generation to have a new use and to have a new cultural layer on top. So it's a living thing. Yeah.
What will the next layer want to be?
When you look at this space and you see like there's the where in the building, you get that sense that people have been here for a long time. So you know that there's something to connect to. So then my job as the historian is to kind of like cut open the factory if it's a cake and show you the layers so you can know, oh, that's why I feel a connection, or oh, that's the same thing I do now, or oh, my grandfather did that and I've heard stories about it and now I can actually see it. It's to like cut away so that I can highlight and actually like tease out those interpersonal moments.
Cakes are places. The layers are us. We are the layers.
So it's less, you know, the physical thing is important, but it's the memories and the character associated with it that will connect you to it. And so that's my job, is to pull out the stories and the human nature of it, and the commonality between something that happened 50 years ago and something that's happening today. And that's where you get that greater sense of connection to your immediate community and also the past, and hopefully makes you think of, all right, somebody was doing this 50 years ago, I'm doing it now. Somebody's gonna be doing it in another 50 years.
Yeah.
That means we're going all the way back to 1929. The largest industry in town was the Lily Mill Flour Company. It's located just less than a mile down the river. So, September of 1929.
passage of time allows us to feel the gravity of those connections, and it makes us feel something. But what do we do with those thoughts? How can we, while in the present, sandwiched between the optimism of the past and the spirit of the future we have yet to feel, share, or document, what do we want that future to be? How do we create and leave space for the next generation to be their fullest selves? How do we honor the past while creating a future? The viability of these efforts comes down to how we as communities value people and the places we live and make memories along the way.
Back in those days, the little cottage was here. We'd go check that out. I very vividly remember the pet store that used to be here, the rescue kind of shelter, because we would go in and look at the kitties there because we've always been an animal-loving family. And then, Third Coast Clay. That was like always a tradition. We do that at least 2 or 3 times a year. Even now, I've got 2 sisters and we make it a point to come at least once a year, and we'll do like a themed plate or something. So our pantry at home is just stacks and stacks of Third Coast Clay pottery that we use as just our regular dining plates. She's 93 years old. She's welcomed visitors to the factory ever since.
You said how tall it was, right?
Yes, it's 110 feet tall. All right, it's trivia time. Do you think the water tower or the smokestack's taller?
Oh, I'm gonna go with smokestack.
Right, correct. It is 10 feet taller, so it's 120 feet back there.
So close.
And our girl up here is 110 feet tall. I refer to her as a sheep, but I don't know why.
We all have places we hold dear and want to keep memories alive in. We rely on people like Carris. It is her calling. Beyond the academic, sorting through piles of documents, building archives, and bringing out the stories into relief for all of us to hear, there is still yet something deeper one must have. That one extra thing you just gotta have to make this all happen. Love.
It's an abundance of love for people, humanity, and the space itself. Someone's gonna come up against something in 30, 40 years, and you might feel alone in it, but then when you can look back and find a story where something similar happened and they dealt with it, and look, 20 years later, people are still doing what people do. It's again, that sense of reaching back through time and holding hands with somebody and being like, you can do it, it's been done before. It might look a little bit different now, but it's not new, it's not different. Gives you a hope and a sense of like support.
Love is the icing on the cake, that sweetness that keeps us together. So what comes next for Carris and the factory at Franklin? And more importantly, who comes next? The next generation will need its own hero to keep the stories at the factory alive to pass forward. I asked Carris, who is the next Carris? And what would you say to that person?
I love you for doing this job, and I hope that we collected enough information that it is really easy for you. It's all about hope and love and appreciation that somebody's still doing the job, that the factory lived that long, and that it was still worth preserving. I'm genuinely overflowing with love for you and the position and the work you're doing.
And what would be your word of advice to them?
Document everything. Photos. I'm sure there's a faster way to take a picture now. But as many details as you can collect for the next person. And just as much as we're looking behind, always look ahead.
Be the Carris in your place and time. And while we all must look ahead, make sure you do it the way Carris does, with love.
You can do all this stuff for like you can have a job to have, financials, and you can do all these things for practical reasons, but at the core of being a human, it just feels like love has to be like the motivator behind all of it, I think, because it's so positive and because it looks out so much. And I think because what you give out, you get back. It has to be, or else it just feels like, what was it for? I don't know. These are really good questions. The cake metaphor got in there. That's my favorite one. I think about it all the time. I'm not just a historian, I'm also like a baker. We're making a really good cake and I want to make sure you know all the ingredients in it and why it tastes so good.
What stamp do you think that you're putting on all this that is of the uniqueness that is you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm still meeting me. I don't know her. I don't know her yet.
What do you think?
I think she's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Maybe a little nerdy, but in a fun way. Honestly, I'll know I've done my job if I have built up easily searchable, usable database where you can go in and pluck the information you need, and you didn't need more than 30 seconds to go do it.
Because people are going to draw their own conclusions in the future about a lot of the history, right? So you're just trying to provide them.
I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible for them to find what they're looking for.